Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So, question for you. Are you somebody that is going through life every day, showing up at work and not really feeling fulfilled? Like you're not living what you think you should be living? Something seems misaligned, but you're not really sure what to do about that. Well, he can help you out with that. He's an accomplished life coach, author, speaker. He will help you find your magnificent if you're one of those people we're talking about. Wait till you hear the stat that he's got. Dr. Bary Fleet is back with us on the program. Welcome back, Bary. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. How about yourself?
I'm well, and I this number is staggering. With the poll that you found recently, I like to believe that you and I are not part of that stat, but share that with everybody. It's a huge number.
Yeah, so LinkedIn did a study in 2018. So this would have been pre-COVID. And my guess is I would bet that the numbers are worse now than they were then. But in 2018, they found that 70% of professionals globally feel like they're not living up to their potential. And there was another study that was done by Gallup that found that only 20% of people believe that they are utilizing their strengths and their talents, which translates into up to 80% of us don't feel fully satisfied with our life or that we're reaching our potential. And I think that's a staggering number.
Really is. Yeah. If I were to take a guess, I would think that, well, on the plus side, 60% maybe, 50, I would never think we're talking 70, 80% of us feel just totally unfulfilled. Now, is that life in general, or is that just professionally what we're doing for work?
That's a great question. My hunch is that it's all connected.
Yeah.
That if I'm not feeling good in my personal life, I'm probably not feeling great about my professional life either, and vice versa.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. And vice versa. You may be miserable at work. Things are okay at home. You bring your work home, maybe not literally, but you're just in a miserable mood. Like, oh, it takes you like an hour or two to unwind from your day, which was not happy.
Right.
And then, rinse and repeat, getting up at 6:30 and back at it again. So yeah, all of that. I think they're all intertwined, all interconnected, right?
I think they are too. And I know that the numbers, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but the number of people who are feeling depressed, who are feeling isolated, I think is also, I mean, the mental health crisis in our country. Every agency that I'm aware of has a backlog of clients trying to get appointments. And so there are lots of folks out there that and what you and I both know is that by the time I get to the point of saying, hey, I need some professional help, a whole lot of time has passed with my unhappiness.
And you're on the waiting list in many ways, depending on your insurance or just a waiting list in general in many parts of the country now for mental health help. And that could be therapist, psychiatrist. I hear it all the time. And I'm going to, pivot for a moment. There's a lot of agencies out there that are overworking people.
Right.
And I'm finding more and more, it's hard to find. I don't want to sound old here, but just the local doctor, like psychiatrist, therapist, you're going to pay typically out of pocket. And just more challenges. Some of these places have just to be considered 12-week waits. So
Right.
yeah, there's a big stuff going on right now that I'm glad we're addressing today.
Yeah. So several thoughts I have about it. One is, and this is going to sound a little radical maybe, but I am convinced that we create our own experiences.
How do you mean?
So I know you like, yeah, I know last time we talked, you mentioned about you love going to live concerts. And there are some people that will go to that concert and have an absolutely wonderful time. And some other people will go to that same concert and be miserable. and complain about the crowd, the noise, the prices, whatever.
Hmm.
Same concert, but come away with two different experiences.
Sure.
And the difference is not the concert, because that's all the same, but it's the person and how the person chooses to react, what the person chooses to do with all of the sensory input. Um, and I think one of the things that a lot of people really balk at is taking responsibility for how I am experiencing life. And I put the power in the facts rather than in the experiencer, which is me.
Hmm.
I'm seeing the wheels turn. What are you thinking?
Yeah, everybody has a different takeaway from something. Um, and I can see that somebody going to a concert and not enjoying it. Maybe they had to go, maybe it wasn't what they were expected. I actually went to one over the weekend and I left early. There was another act coming on and I was good. I was like,
Yeah,
who I was with, I was like, you know what? I think we're good. I think we're good. We can go. I don't need to see the other act, but because I just wanted to feel the vibe, the positivity. The other act was, going to be a little bit late too. Um, but yeah, we take away different things from different experiences. But like to your point, we create it. You can create whatever you want.
right. And in your case, rather than feeling victimized by having to stay for the other act, you said, no, I'm good. I don't need to do this anymore. I've got the experience that I wanted. I'm going to
Yeah,
take that home and be good with it. But you don't leave feeling bitter or down or negative about it.
not at all.
And that's what I'm sensing with a lot of folks is, um, if you're not happy, what's going on inside you, and what changes do you need to make to experience happiness, rather than waiting for the world to change to give me something that I can feel happy about.
How do you find those things?
So there are several things. One is, I think a lot of it has to do with our peer group, who we hang out with, and depending on whose numbers you listen to, we are the average of the 5, 6, 7 people that we spend the most time with.
Yep.
And if those people are negative, chances are I'm going to be negative too. If those people find the good in everything, chances are that I'm going to find the good in everything. Um, so I think it starts with paying attention to who we hang out with, who our friends are, because that influences us way beyond, I think, what we're consciously aware of.
Mm.
I think another piece has to do with finding meaning in what we do, instead of just going on the treadmill and going on the treadmill for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, whatever it is, until I can get off, until I have to get on again. What is it I'm doing that is making the world a better place? How can I look at it that way? Um, whether it's entertaining, whether it's educating, whether it's whatever, but finding meaning in it. And the other thing that I'm a big believer in is having a sense of gratitude.
Mm.
And I know you and I've talked about that some time ago, about the power that comes when I sit down at the end of the day and think, what went well today? What am I grateful for today? Or getting up in the morning and before I even get out of bed, thinking, what do I have to be grateful for today? What do I have to look forward to today? Um, but the other part, I think the underlying piece is how I make sense of the facts in my life. Just to give you an example, I was talking to a friend the other day. Um, she's she's a little bit. Her husband is a little bit older. He's retired. She's thinking about retiring. They just remodeled their house. They refinanced the house to remodel it. And she was looking at it and she said, Bary, we've just got this huge debt And if something happens to my husband, I don't know what I'm going to do. And, and, we started talking some more, and I asked about the mortgage. She said, well, we're paying $1,000 a month on a mortgage. And I said, where can you live? Where can you rent for $1,000?
What planet? Because I'll fly there. Right.
Yeah. I said, so instead of looking at this indebtedness that you have, if you would look at this as, hey, I've got to deal with a bank that says, here, I'm going to let you live in this house, $1,000 a month. You do that for 12 and a half years, and I'll give you the house and you don't have to pay rent anymore. What a deal. Who wouldn't sign up for that?
Seriously. And secondly, and I would never say this up until a couple of years ago in my journey. What are you worried about? Why is she worrying about that? Everybody's different. But because she's not looking at the pluses, the gratitude, the $1,000.
Right.
That's, check mark. Um, House looks great. We love it here. Love the neighborhood. Ding, check mark. All of that. She's marinating about something, gosh forbid would happen, but there's no signs of it, gonna happen. Why expend energy on that? And I'm not judging anybody. That's just my feeling.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And to your point, she's anticipating something that might happen in the future and depriving herself of the joy that's in the moment.
Exactly. And guess what? It's going to happen in the future. That's called life.
Yeah, something is going to happen, but we
Right.
don't know. And we know statistically what might happen, but those are just numbers, and who really knows?
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that happens to a lot of us is we get caught up either ruminating about decisions we made or didn't make in the past, and that's why I'm in the mess I'm in now, or thinking about what might happen in the future. And either way, we're missing out on today and being able to feel good about today.
Doesn't that go back to what we've talked about in other episodes where we need to be present? You need to live in the now as opposed to what she's doing. We're just using her as an example.
Right.
But looking at what could happen. Well, it's not like, as far as I know, her husband is ill, not doing well. No, everything seems reasonably good, especially $1,000 a month. Um, Celebrate that. That's all good. But I think it goes back to some of the other things that we've mentioned in the past. Write it down. You have to physically write those things down so you see it in before you. And I just got something dropped out of the sky. It was a quote from Lee Iacocca. Remember him? Big guy from way back
Absolutely.
in the day. Yeah. And he never forgot this, but he said, if it's not in print, it doesn't exist. If it wasn't written down, it doesn't exist. Now, of course, this exists because it's in our mind and we're thinking about it. But what he was saying is, in terms of a deal, you have a handshake or whatever it might be. It's not, not written down, doesn't exist. This kind of doesn't exist unless you see it for your eyes in front of you and you make that connection between your mind and your hand, writing it down.
And the other part of writing it down is I have a record. And if I keep a gratitude journal, which I do and which I encourage people to do,
Mhm.
I can periodically sit down and read through that and look at all of the list of things of day after day after day and experiences that I've had in the past that I've got this great basket of gratitude.
Yeah.
And sometimes rather than allowing myself to be immersed in this basket of all these wonderful experiences, I get tangled up on the thing that didn't happen the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And then now I make myself miserable. I rob myself of joy.
I started a gratitude journal. I need to regularly be in it, but restarted it over the weekend. And I looked back to the last entry and I could not believe how much time went by. I think about 4 months
Uh-huh.
and maybe a little bit more. In my mind, maybe a month and a half. But I went back to the last entry and it's just like, wow, all right, that's what you were thinking on that day. Ah, interesting. Pretty cool. Then you use it as a timeline. What was I going through at that time? Okay, that's
Right.
interesting too. So, yeah, it is very, to your point, very impactful looking back at things like that. Do you look at even time 6 months ago to now and what transpired? And do you look at that and say to yourself, wow, yeah, a lot happened there. I moved my life forward in a lot of different ways in that period of time. But a lot of times we just look at the little slices and say, I'm not moving forward. Things are not changing. But if you look at it in a slice of like a half a year, it's like, whoa, all right. When you look back to that, to this, there's a lot that went on in that time. Do you look at it that way?
I do. And another study that I find interesting is most of us overestimate what we can get done in a year,
Hmm.
but we underestimate what we can get done in 3 years.
Never heard that before, but that does make you think now, doesn't it?
Yeah. Um, and what triggered this is I pulled out one of my old journals, and it was 4 years ago, and I made a list of things that I wanted in my life,
Hmm.
and I looked and I've got them.
And people say that manifesting things doesn't work.
Yeah. Um, and it was just kind of amazing to realize, oh, and it happened in that time period. Um,
Hmm.
so that's another um, reason to write things down.
So I want to go a little bit deeper into that, Barry. The things that you got from the journal, we don't have to go into detail about those things, but did you continually journal about them? Or was it a one-off? I really like to have this. How did that go? I'm kind of curious.
It really was a one-off.
Really?
Um, I wanted to write a bestseller. I wanted to do a Spartan trifecta. I wanted to live in a house that felt more like me instead of feeling like somebody else's house that I've moved into. Um, and I just one day I just sat down and wrote out this list, and set it aside. And I would, periodically I would think about those things, but it was just kind of off on the side. And it wasn't until the other day I was cleaning out some old stuff and flipping through some journals, and there was my list, and here I am.
Wow. I'm going to take my pen. I'm going to write one down. $1,000 a month rent or
Yeah.
more.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And we look at it that way, we kind of laugh, but you never know what's going to happen. You may come into a lot of money. You may win something. It's going to be typically hard to find a mortgage for, $1,000 a month unless you put a ton down, whatever it might be, but you don't know what's going to happen. Now, I got to believe when you made that list, you weren't turning around and saying, how am I going to do that? How am I going to run that race? How am I going to get the house that feels like me? You just threw it to the universe.
Right. Right. And like you say, the universe figures out the how. I have to figure out the what. And the more specific I can be with the what, the better my odds are of getting what I'm wanting. The other night, my wife and I were talking. She said, "What do you want for supper tonight?" And she said, "Oh, let's do Chinese." I said, "What do you want?" She said, "Oh, let's do Chinese." I said, "All right, so I'm going to just call the restaurant." I said, "I want some Chinese tonight." Well, well, you know, it doesn't work that way.
Well, okay, so you bring up a great point. I've often heard that if you're going to manifest something like you did, you made a list of things you wanted, you need to go into detail. You need to be very specific about those things. And
Absolutely.
same thing to your Chinese example. Were you specific in your list this time?
Um, Specific in that I knew what I wanted my house to feel like. Um, I knew that I wanted to complete a Spartan trifecta. Um, I knew that I wanted to write a bestseller. Um, so those were all measurable things. Um, but it wasn't. it wasn't, I want to sell X number of copies of the book, which some people do and have done really well with saying, I want to write a book and I want to sell however many thousand copies of it by the end of 2024. Okay, that's really specific, and that's great. But mine was much more general, but it was measurable. I either would write the book that I write would be a bestseller or wouldn't be.
How did you phrase it in your list about the book? About the book.
I want to write a best-selling book.
Okay. All right. So it needs to be or could be interpreted what best-selling means, right? Somebody could look at that in a different way. Could be an Amazon bestseller. It could for a day. Sometimes
Right.
they do
Right.
that. Yeah. So there is, some specifics involved there. But then on the other side, it's often been said, don't get too specific.
Right.
Like, for example, if you're trying to manifest the perfect person, perfect partner in your life, list qualities. Don't put hair, eye color, all of that. You never know. Unless you have, that's really important to you. You just want those things, those qualities in a person.
So what I think is important is I want to know how I feel in the presence of that person.
That should be on your list.
That's on my list. And the feelings behind the experience, I think, are the specifics. I knew how I would wanted to feel, the pride that I would have of being able to say, "Hey, I'm a best-selling author." The pride I would have of saying, I celebrated my 70th birthday by completing a Spartan trifecta. So thinking about how I'm going to feel as I experience that, and rather than thinking about it when it happens, it's happening now. How am I feeling right now with that result?
When you made that list, did you, I got just about a minute left, but I'm really curious about this. Did you think those things? What it would feel like to be that author? What it would feel like, by your 70th to run that race?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. And I think that's key. I think that's all of it right there.
I think that's where the power is. It's in the feeling. It's in the emotional experience, and that goes back to gratitude. It's one thing to make a list of things that we're grateful for, but to actually feel the gratefulness as I'm writing it. That's where the power comes from.
I 100% agree. And that's going to gravitate you closer to reaching that goal.
Right.
When it's heartfelt, when it is you, aside from just, I'm just making a list here and see what happens. No, you got to feel it. You got to feel it. That's what it's all about.
And when I think about to tie back into the beginning, when we talked about so many people who are feeling unsatisfied with their life, I'm willing to bet that virtually none of them are writing gratitude journals.
Yeah.
They're not stopping to think about or experience all that is good in their life, all that they have for which they can be grateful.
It's so important to feel it. And many of us, it's good to step one, write it down.
Right.
But truly feel it. If somebody's feeling like they're just kind of stuck, you're one of the 70% that we mentioned in the beginning where you don't feel fulfilled in your life, your job, or whatever it may be. Can they come to you and have you, kind of work on that with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go to my website, www.drbaryfleet.com. On there is my cell phone number if you want to call me or text me. My email is there. Reach out, be in touch. Be glad to talk and see if it's a good fit. See if what you're looking for is something that I can help you experience.
And thank you for sharing what you shared because it's very impactful. The fact that you uncovered that list of, call it, goals, and they actually took place, and the process that was involved in that. There are some people that say, the manifestation thing, it doesn't really work. Well, there's proof that it actually works right there.
There certainly is. Absolutely.
And that was just a surprise to you. It wasn't even like, you had this piece of paper or notebook in the wings and let me go dig that out. No, you just chance came across it. And sure enough, everything took place. And at that time, I'm sure you were thinking, I don't know if this will ever happen, but it'd be cool if it did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Bary, always a pleasure talking with you. Learn a lot as we all do, and looking forward next time we get together.
So am I, Steve. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.